Welcome to this series on some intermediate and advanced Python. So in this series, I'm just going to go over some of the slightly more advanced topics in Python that would be useful and some of the tips and tricks and more Pythonic way of doing things. So yeah, I hope you guys like this series. So today we will go over the concept of private access specifiers in Python, or protected or public. And yeah, so let's dig right in. So I'm using Visual Studio Code over here, and so C++ has these access specifiers that so when you, for example, declare a class, say XYZ, and so you declare this public and you write whatever your commands, and then you define private and you declare some stuff, and then there is protected. So these are the access specifiers that C++ has. So private objects or private attributes cannot be accessed from outside the class and so on. Fortunately or unfortunately, the way Python is designed, it does not have these access specifiers. So technically everything is public in Python. And the way Python goes about specifying variables is variables or specifying setting variables as private is by using some name mangling. And I'll go over that. But the bottom line is everything is public in Python and everything can be accessed from outside the class. So, but there are certain ways or certain things that you can do to hide your variables, quote unquote. So let's go over that. So let me just define this access specifiers in Python. So let me first create my class test, and let me define my constructor. And in this constructor, I defined three variables. So public, let's say it's 5, and I define a variable called protected, and I define it with an underscore in front. So call it protected. Set its values to be 6. And then I define this variable called private, whose name has 2 underscores in the beginning. Now, double underscores are commonly called dunder dunder. So yeah, so that's just a name. So this is my class, which just has like the constructor has 3 variables: public, protected has 1 underscore in front, and private has 2 underscores in front. So let's start by printing out each variable. So let me create an instance, say test. And then let me first print out the public variable. So this is an f string. So this is the public variable. And then I pass in a dot public. And let's compile and run. Or rather, let's just run it. So, okay, so here you can see we were able to access the public variable, which is fine, which is how it should be. So again, when I say these are public variables in quotes, so these are not public variables in the true sense of access specifiers. These are what I am calling public, private, and protected. So, right, so this is a public variable. Now, what about this variable? Now, this underscore variable, what it does, so whenever the name of a variable begins with an underscore, it indicates to other programmers that this is a private or a protected method or variable. So you should be careful when accessing it. So it's not something that is imposed by Python, but then it's a commonly understood thing that whenever a variable begins with underscore, be careful with it. It should be treated like a private or slash protected variable. But the thing is that we will be able to access this from outside. So let me copy this and replace this with protected. As you can see, I was all the autocomplete was already completing the name, so that means I was able to access it. And when I run it, as you can see, I am able to access it from outside. Now, okay, that's good. One more thing that whatever I'm saying applies to, so I have written a very simple example that just has some simple variables, but then the same applies to methods as well. Now, what about this thing? So when you have two underscores, Python provides some additional protection against editing those. So these variables, of course, can be edited from inside the class. So for example, I can have a method, let's say +1, and what it does is it adds or it prints 1 and prints the private added by 1. So if I call this method, so if I say a dot +1, so let's see. So when I print it, I get 8 because that's what it's supposed to do. So of course I can access all these variables from inside the class because I mean that makes sense. But let's try printing this private variable from outside the class. So when I do that, let me do it the same way. So let me get rid of this method and let me type it out. A dot private. Now when I try it, I get an error. So you see the public was printed, the protected, again in quotes protected, was printed, but this for the private variable we got an error which stated that this object has no attribute private. So what's happening over here? Now here's the thing, here's an additional layer of protection that Python provides is so when you really want a variable to be not when you really want a variable to not be accessed from outside, right? So what Python does is if you have double underscore, it does some name mangling. So its name isn't just dot underscore underscore private. Its name is changed. So, but if we know what change it is, we will be able to access it. And so now let me print out, instead of typing this name, what I will do, I'll put an underscore, I will type in the class name and then the variable name. So first I put an underscore, then the class name, and then dunder dunder private, the variable name. So now when I print it, you see it works. So now I was able to access this variable 7. So what Python did was it replaced its name, or it mangled its name by adding in this class name to the object's variable. So it's a sort of protection that Python provides to make it less accessible, if you may. But yeah, as you can see, you can still, if you were determined enough, you can still access those variables. But then these mainly serve as to tell other developers or other users of the method or other programmers to not modify these variables or methods. And the same applies to methods as well. You can make quote unquote private and protected methods. So if your method name begins with 2 underscores, it is mangled. So just like the constructor is mangled. So this is how Python treats access specifiers. Well, or um, this is how Python deals with not having access specifiers. So yeah, I guess this is it for this video. I hope you liked it, and I will keep on putting out more intermediate to Python, to advanced Python stuff. All right, see you next time.